Hello, Panthers fans. Welcome back into Panthers.com. I'm Cassidy Hill here with Trevor Sikkema, lead draft analyst of PFF. If you have been with us over the last few weeks, you have seen Trevor take us through a lot of position groups, a lot of mock draft possibilities, and we're wrapping up now with a position that is always fun to talk about in the draft. Not necessarily one that is as deep this year as it has been in years past, but the wide receiver group in this year's draft still deserves a lot of attention. Before we kind of get into who you have targeted and who's caught your eye, possibly in relation to the Panthers, let's look at this Panthers wide receiver core as it currently sits.
Yeah.
It's an interesting group. I mean, you have Xavier Legette, someone that they traded up to get in the first round last year. Adam Thielen, Old Faithful, as Dan Morgan calls him.
Sure.
Jalen Coker, an undrafted rookie who really kind of found a footing last year.
For sure.
David Moore, someone that Dave Canales loves, has tagged with him in Seattle and Tampa, now here for the Panthers. But a wide receiver core that you could say, doesn't necessarily have a star name. Is that fair?
No, I think that's fair. At least the way that I look at Carolina's receiving room, and I've had these conversations with people, I think throughout the draft process. When you look at even, say, a mock draft simulator like we have over at PFF.com, we might have wide receiver up there as a position of need for the Carolina Panthers. But there really needs to be more context in that. It's not that the Panthers need just any wide receiver, because sometimes you go into a draft and you go, well, this team, they just don't have enough receivers who you feel good about right now. Wide receivers in need, they could draft one anywhere and kind of plug and play. For the Panthers, it's a little bit specific. I think that there's two things that they might need. It's not overall just give them any wide receiver. It's basically if you think there is a wide receiver one caliber prospect in this class, which I do, which we'll talk about here in a second, that player could be on the board for you. Or is there a player that gives you a little bit of extra juice when it comes to stretching the field vertically? That, I think, could also be a valuable piece to the wide receiver room in Carolina. But a slot receiver, they don't really need that. Just a contested catch receiver, don't really need that. You got David Moore to be reliable. You got Jalen Coker to be reliable for you. So it's not just any wide receiver that would fit in Carolina. It's specific
Needs to be the right
wide receivers that I think they would be interested in, which honestly makes this conversation pretty fun when you look at this draft class.
Yeah, you can kind of start plugging and play in here. As you said, a couple of guys that could be a wide receiver one, not necessarily a wide receiver class that has a Justin Jefferson in it or something like that. Probably the first time in a few years we haven't had a super, super deep receiver class.
Last year was just unbelievably talented, and so it's not quite last year's class, with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors and Rome Odunze was in that class. Obviously, what we saw Brian Thomas do. So everybody loved the wide receivers that were in last year's class. It's not quite as star-studded, but I tell people all the time, man, with the rise of how popular 7-on-7 is in middle school and in high school, these skill position players are getting development especially at wide receiver, earlier and at higher levels than they ever have before. So that's why, a couple of my friends, we talk about this, okay, this year's wide receiver class might not be last year's, but it's still got some studs in it. I don't know if we will ever have a down wide receiver class ever again because of things like that.
So the bar has been risen.
Oh, just totally overall. The depth of wide receiver classes is just consistent every single year.
With that in mind, let's look at some guys that could be targeted in an early round. And again, as Trevor said, this is kind of looking at the Panthers wide receiver core as it currently sits.
Yeah.
Who could be an early round target?
So I mentioned Carolina is probably not interested in getting just any old wide receiver. There's really two categories. Is there a player that you think is a wide receiver one or maybe a vertical threat? Here in the first round, if we're talking about one at number 8, Tet McMillan's the guy. And I genuinely believe that he could be this for Carolina. He should be on the board for them. And if you plug him into this wide receiver room already, I think when you look at Carolina's receiving core, because you could throw tight ends in there as well, you could say, this group's all right. I think this group could do it. I think they could certainly score enough points each week to be able to make this offense competitive and allow Bryce Young to continue to develop. If you take this wide receiver room and then put Tet McMillan at the very top, all of a sudden I go, all right, this could be something that could be pretty dangerous here, because Tetero, if he is your wide receiver one, he allows you to put these guys in their most advantageous situations. Sometimes Adam Thielen's had to be relied upon as that wide receiver one. And, he was at times when he was in Minnesota. He's done that because he's been asked to here in Carolina, but he's getting a little bit long in the tooth, and so we know that, like, that's just sort of the nature of it. I think that he could still play in this league, but do you want him being your wide receiver one? I'm not so sure that that's the best choice to go in every single week. Leggett, I know that some people are down on him after his rookie season. I'm in no way giving up on him, but, you know, when you look at him, he won physically at the college level, and any time that you win off of physicality at the college level, it's always going to be a little bit of an adjustment for you when you get to the pros, because guys are bigger, they're stronger, they're faster, as the saying goes. But allowing him to sort of play to his strengths, I think, could really help. David Moore, Jalen Coker, like how reliable those guys are, putting them in their exact positions where they can be as reliable or as productive as you want them to be. All of that is possible when you have Tet McMillan at the very top. I think without him, you sort of get in a situation where you might be wondering who's going to be wide receiver one or receiver one for you each week. And I think that just with Tet at the top of the pyramid, if you will, it just funnels down and allows these other guys' strengths to shine better. And it allows Dave Canales to put them in the exact positions where they're going to succeed the most.
Tet's had 2 seasons of 1,300 plus yards. So, I mean, as we said, he's obviously had the production. This is a guy also, though, that has gotten a little bit of a reputation as far as his separation goes. If you're a wide receiver one in the NFL, that also means you're going to draw number one corner. They're probably going to press.
Yeah.
How is he able to take that?
So he needs to get a more diverse release package off the line of scrimmage, because, to be honest, he didn't face press as much as you would have wanted at the college level. There's just not a lot of – you mentioned at the NFL, a lot of these corners, they're good enough, they're strong enough, they're big enough to be able to play press a lot. It's not really the case in college football. It's not always a guarantee that you get teams that just are able to play press coverage.
Especially in the Big 12.
So Tet really didn't need to develop a release package that allowed him to get off the line of scrimmage pretty cleanly, but I think he can do it. So it's not like this dude is a perfect prospect. He's not Calvin Johnson, Julio Jones, something like that, but he is somebody that I do think can be a wide receiver one in this league. I think he comps very well to Drake London. I really do. And Drake London, some people worry about Tet McMillan's separation ability and the fact that he never ran a 40 this offseason. Drake London had the exact same concerns, and Drake London also did not run a 40 when he was going through his draft cycle. He's doing pretty good for the Atlanta Falcons, right? And he is there for sure, wide receiver one there, and he allows him to do a lot of different things. I see Tet as the similar type of player there.
Okay. Panthers have 9 picks overall, 8 in the first 5 rounds. So the mid-round could really be where you can do a lot of work here. You have a lot of draft capital. Who is a mid-round wide receiver that has caught your eye?
So this sort of goes into what I was talking about before, where there's the two different buckets in which I could see Carolina drafting a wide receiver. One is the wide receiver one. We already talked about that with McMillan. Now I want to see, okay, who are the speedy dudes? Who are the players who, when you mention the skill sets of Leggett and Thielen and Coker and Moore, who complements that the best? To me, it's a guy who knows how to win deep down the field, a guy who can stretch the field vertically. Trey Harris from Ole Miss is somebody who I think would be perfect in this offense as a complementary piece. Now, he is also a bit of a contested catch receiver. He's a bigger wide receiver, but a lot of what he does is off of that vertical plane. It's 9 routes, it's skinny posts, it's deep overs, it's deep crossers. And the thing that I like about him, we talked about this with Tet McMillan, how I want to see a little bit better of a release package from him off the line of scrimmage. That is the area where I am the most impressed with Trey Harris when it's come to growth this past season. When I watched him in 2023, he was the same sort of vertical stretching, big, tall, wide receiver, but he really didn't know how to get off the line of scrimmage. And I sort of got worried about that, and I was like, man, I don't know if you're ever really going to be able to be the wide receiver that we need you to be at the NFL level, even with your speed. This year, you could tell he worked on it a lot in the summer before the season. And he had a bunch of different releases that he would go to. He knew how to attack inside and outside leverages at the right time. And so for him, if he is on the field and he is a consistent player that Bryce can maybe attempt and hopefully complete some of those deep passes to, well, then it opens up everything underneath. Then Leggett gets to become more of a yards after catch type of a wide receiver. Then you get to have the same thing from Jalen Coker as a possession, as Adam Thielen from a possession wide receiver. So the whole offense really opens up if they add another vertical threat here, and Trey Harris has been one of the best in college football this past season.
If there's anything Lane Kiffin's going to do, it's going to teach his receivers how to get downfield and attract meet and win.
Yes, absolutely.
Late round guy, as you mentioned, some of these late rounds is where you can find scheme guys, and if that's going to be the case for a wide receiver for the Panthers, who could a late round guy be?
Again, it's the same conversation that we have here. Deontay Thornton, the wide receiver from Tennessee, is sort of the same thing. This is a big, tall, fast wide receiver who, if you ask Thornton to run routes that aren't, again, a 9 route, a post, even maybe like a deep comeback, and even that, like, he's just not familiar with it. Not that he can't do it, but he is very much like Tennessee's offense. You mentioned Lane Kiffin does this. Tennessee does this as well. You hike the football, you're in those stacked alignments. One of those guys is getting a free release. One of them's going deep up the field. And the thing is that if you can't cover them, they're going to make you pay. He led Tennessee in receiving yards this year, but it was from I believe it was something around a 25 yards per catch average.
Wow.
Which is nuts. And it just shows you.
I would think you made it up.
That number is a good number is like 15.
Yeah.
15 is like a really good number. And like more possession wide receivers, okay, maybe they're like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, something between like the 8 and 12 range. 25 yards per catch is insane. So to get over 600 yards, over 650 yards this season while having that type of a yards per catch average, it means that, okay, maybe you're not catching a ton of passes, but you're catching ones that really matter a lot. So he has legit size to him at 6'5", and yet he's got that blazing speed. And so I think just the lack of refinement in the rest of his game, the lack of versatility, sort of just streamlines him into thinking, okay, he is this one-trick pony type of a wide receiver, but holy cow, that pony can win the show.
That trick is good.
It really can, and so that's why I love Deontay Thornton potentially in this Panthers offense.
Okay, someone to keep an eye on for sure as we get closer and closer to the draft. If you have enjoyed Trevor's insight here the last few weeks with us, I know I have, make sure to find him at Pro Football Focus. Trevor, tell them where else they can find you and what they can look for from you leading up to this draft.
Everything at Pro Football Focus, the NFL Stock Exchange show as well, where myself and Connor Rogers are talking NFL draft every single week, getting everybody ready for the NFL draft. But yeah, the draft guide from PFF is out. You guys can do your own mock drafts if you want to. We've got the big board that we're updating all the way until draft day. So go check that stuff out. Get yourself a PFF subscription and make sure you get to use all of our fantastic tools that help me get to make rankings like this.
Well, we certainly enjoyed it. Trevor, thank you for all of your insight, your time. I can't let you go just yet because I'm pretty sure we are obligated when Trevor Sikkema is here to ask. In fact, it's probably in your contract. What are some of your favorite barbecue places in Charlotte? People can get these barbecue as they sit down to watch the draft.
Okay, so recently got married, and
congratulations.
Thank you. And before I got married, part of my bachelor party day was getting barbecue.
It would be. And
me and a couple of great buddies, we drove about an hour outside of Charlotte, Peachland, North Carolina.
Okay.
John G's is the barbecue place. Now, it's as far as I know, it's a husband and wife that runs this place. They are only open on Saturdays. It is genuinely some of the best barbecue, if not the best barbecue I've ever had. The best ribs I've ever had in my life. And so that is my favorite barbecue place. Also, shout out Sweet Lou's. I love Sweet Lou's. Okay. It's a little closer into the city for anybody that's more in the city, Charlotte area. That's one of my favorites.
You know, when I first moved here, I reached out to you to ask where to go. And you mentioned John G's. I think you said you have to go tailgate if you want to get there.
Which is half the fun.
Saturday.
It really is. They open up, I think it's 10 a.m. or 11 a.m., but you get there at 8, bring some lawn chairs, bring some music, hang out, and just it's a good time. It's a lot of fun.
As the free agents were coming through here a couple weeks ago, Bobby Brown asked, where do I find some barbecue in Charlotte? And I said, well, according to Trevor Sikkema, you go here. And gave
Bobby,
him
I got
that
you.
list.
I got you.
Yeah, go to Trevor for all of your NFL draft and barbecue needs. Trevor, thank you again for all your time, all your insight. Find him at PFF. I'm Cassidy Hill. Stay tuned to Panthers.com and Panthers YouTube as we lead up to the NFL draft.